Hi there, Spence here again. I had a comment on YouTube on one of the last videos I did, so we're going to extend our series we've been working on one more video. So that's always good. I'm glad I can help out however I can. So the first one we did was on the old gas station where we went and actually on location and took a photo of that. Then the second video was on the developing, so I took you through the whole developing process. Then the third video we did was on the scanning and how I get it digitized and get it into the computer. And now this video is going to be on how I do my printing. So how do I actually get from the computer onto a piece of paper? My background is I was a pre-press manager for over 20 years. If you're not sure what that is, that's basically I was one of the people in charge. Like when you buy a magazine, that page 1 comes before page 2 and that the color looks right and make sure that the fonts and all that kind of stuff looks okay. So that's kind of my wheelhouse. So I'm very familiar with this, having to get what looks good on the screen onto a piece of paper, which I know can really be frustrating at times, especially the ink being as expensive as it is and paper, and we're going to talk all about that stuff. So what we'll do is we'll jump into the computer here and I'll show you a few things that I got ready to go. Okay, so here's what we're going to do is before we talk about anything, I've gone ahead and queued up some things for us. The first thing that we have to think about when we're talking about printing is you want to make sure that the screen is going to match the printed product. So you don't have to print 5 or 6 pieces to try to get the one that you really like. You want to get it one time and be done with it, and then that's the most efficient way. So what we have here is the x-rite i1 Display Pro. This is the one that I actually use. As you can see, basically it has a little lens on the bottom of this piece, and this goes against your screen like so. And what this will basically do is it will flash a bunch of colors, and it will also check to see if the brightness is too high or too low. Generally, when you buy a new computer and you pull it out of the box, it's generally too bright. I love Mac products, been using them for 20 some years. They've never let me down. However, every time I bought a Mac, the screen has always been icy and too bright. So if you've ever had the issue of trying to print something and it's printing too dark, it's not the printer that's giving you the problem, it's the screen. The screen is telling you a lie. So by dimming the screen, then it's going to force you to open up your prints a little bit in the software, whatever it is that you're using, and therefore they're going to come out correctly. The secret number for that is 60 to 80. I believe the units is in candelas. So I actually have a video on how all this x-rite stuff works, and I'll link that down below in the comment section so you can check that out if you have not seen it. So that one I did quite a while ago, and it's pretty well the same. So if you're interested in checking this out. The other option that you have is called this Color Monkey, kind of a strange name. But what this will do is it will also do the screen, but it will also, you can create your own paper profiles, which we're going to talk about in a few minutes. So my suggestion is contact your printers manufacturers first and see if they can help you, which I'm going to show you here in a second. But this is kind of like the next level up. And the i1 Display Pro is a really good device. I'd say I've been using it for a really long time. But if you need that extra control, then I would consider the Color Monkey. Here's another little tip. If you belong to a camera club somewhere, sometimes what they'll do is they will have one of these devices for you to check out as part of your dues, and then you just use it and then return it. So that's even better. The i1 Display Pro runs around, I want to say around 200. Don't quote me on this, I didn't look it up today. The Color Monkey generally is around 400 to 500, so it is an investment. Here's something else you need to know about these, is that when you do your screen, you calibrate it and it looks great. You're not done. Every 4 weeks, you're going to need to recalibrate the screen because these do drift over time as via color and brightness. So every 4 weeks, I have a little part of what's in the software is like a little alarm or a little notice to let you know that you need to recalibrate, and it's real simple. You just plug the little doodad in, that's the official term, doodad, into the USB port, and then you just stick it on here and run the software, and automatically does what it needs to do, and it will update that profile for you. So every 4 weeks generally should keep you keep your monitors pretty well in check, so that shouldn't be a problem. So that's kind of the first thing. Now the second thing is the ICC profiles. Now I have an Epson 9880, which is about, the printer's 10 years old. It's a 44-inch wide printer. It's a real nice one. In fact, it still makes beautiful prints today for me. So you want to go to your manufacturer's website. I'm using Epson, so that's what we're going to look at today. If you have Canon, HP, some other brand, you might want to go to their website. And you want to do a search. What I did is I went under support and then printers, and I typed in 9880, and it brought me to this page. And under the download section here, you can see you've put in whatever operating system you're working with. I'm Mac, so I'll just stick with this. And down here, now this is drivers. That's actually the software that you use for the computer to work with, but we don't need that today. Down here where it says ICC profiles, this is the one, when you click on the little plus there, it drops this down, and you can then go ahead and download these. And what you're going to get are these interesting named files, like mine will say Epson 9880 underscore PPLP260. And then there's another one. So when you download this whole package, there should be a sheet in there that's like your key. That's the guide to tell you that if you're going to print on Epson Photogloss, then you need this weird named profile. If you're going to print on Epson Luster, then you're going to want this other named one. So that's kind of the key. So these are free. Of course, Epson wants you to have these because they want you to be happy, because they want you to come back and buy more ink and more paper and more product for them. So it's in their interest to get you to get a really nice printout. Now this is assuming you're using, in this case, in this example, Epson printer, Epson ink, and Epson paper. If you decide to use an Epson printer, and you got Epson ink, and you decide to use paper from your local office supply store because it was really cheap, then I'd say try it. It may or may not work. It just depends. There are other companies that are in the business. Another one that I've bought from and been very happy with, they're not paying me to say this, that'd be nice if they would, right, is Red River paper, if you look them up, and they do offer profiles for a lot of different printers. So if you want to try something else, I can tell you Red River, they're really on it as far as their ICC profiling and trying to keep up with all the different papers and the printers and the technology. So anyway, so there you go. So that's kind of the part. We've got the screen part, and now we've got the software part. Now when you download these Epson, or I should say these ICC profiles, what do you do with them? So basically on your desktop you will have a file, and then you double click it and it will have all the profiles in it. But where do they go? Now on a Windows machine, you can right click on the ICC and do install profile. That's the way I've seen it done. On a Mac, we have to put it in the color sync folder. So where does that go? So you're going to take all these .icc files, and then we're going to go up here to go, and I'm going to choose computer, and then I'm going to click on the name of your hard drive. Mine happens to be called Macintosh HD. And then I'm going to go over here to where it says library, and then you'll see there's a color sync folder. So if I click that, there's one in here that says profiles. And here you can see here are all the profiles that I have in here. And also your monitor profiles will go in here as well. So you would take your profiles, you will then just copy and drag them in here. It may ask you to put in your computer password so they know that somebody who actually owns the machine is doing this. So if you're watching this and you're using somebody else's computer, or you work in a corporation, you might need the administrator password to make that work. But if it's your own, you probably know what it is. So anyway, so you dump them in there, copy them in there, and then basically, if you have Photoshop, Lightroom, Elements, anything like that open, you'll want to shut them down and restart them. What I would suggest is shutting all the software down first. Go ahead and do your changeover, copy your files, your ICC profiles into that color sync folder, and then fire everything back up, and then they will be live. So then the software then can see them. So that's kind of step one. So now we know our screen is showing us the right brightness and the right colors. So we know that the red that we should be seeing is the red that should be coming out of the printer, which is always good. And the ICC profiles, what their job is, because I didn't really touch on this, they tell the printer how to put the ink on the paper. So if you think about it, if you've ever printed on matte paper, think of like a newspaper type of paper. It's very porous. If you spill water or coffee on it, what happens to the ink? It starts to go like this into the paper. Whereas if you print on a photogloss paper, the ink comes out of the nozzle, it hits the paper and it stays there because these papers are coated. They're called RC papers. They're resin coated. So the ink does not spread like it would as if it was on, say, on a matte paper or watercolor paper. So it needs to know how to lay down the ink on that specific paper. So that's why these ICC profiles are kind of important to use. So, all right, so now let's work on a photo, and we'll take something just to kind of show you. We talked in the last video, the scanning video, a little bit about the sharpening and stuff, so I'll go over a little bit of that again. If you saw the last video, then you'll be up to speed on this. If this is kind of new to you, then you may want to go back and watch that, or you can kind of, I'm sure you guys can figure it out from this one. All right, so basically what I'll do is I'm just going to launch, I'll use Elements. I'll flip back between Elements and Photoshop. Now I do have, don't laugh, Photoshop CS5. It still works. I know it's like 10 years old, but it still works for what I need. Basically what I do in these programs for my film photography is I crop, I heal, I clone, and I sharpen. That's it. I'm not trying to make a painting out of them or do any fancy shading and lighting and all that kind of stuff. So I know there's a lot of people out there doing textures and things like that. That might be something where you might need the big Photoshop CC. But for what I'm doing right now, Photoshop Elements is working. As of right now, this video, Photoshop Elements 2018 is the most current version. It just came out a few months ago. So I'm using Elements version 13, which is you might as well say 3 years old, and it's still working fine. So I'm kind of in the camp of if it isn't broke, don't fix it. So whatever you guys want to use, that's fine. This is just what I'm going to use to demo today. All right, so here is our image. Now actually something I want to do is I don't want to open up this one just yet. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to open up, if you remember from the last video, I try to explain that, for example, this is my latest photo that I've taken. And right here is the one that came out of the scanner. You guys saw that one last time, how we did that. And then what I do is I have this one here. This one actually says underscored layered. It's partly truncated. But this is the one that has all of my dust and scratch removal on it. And then what I do from that is, because the files start to get really, really big, is I will then come over here to contrast, and I will collapse that and then hit it with my contrast. Sometimes I'll use an S-curve, sometimes I'll use a Nik plugin. It just depends on what I'm in the mood for. So, and then I've got these finished ones. So here you can see I got 8 by 10, 16 by 20, 24 by 30, 32 by 40, and 40 by 50. So these are the ones I always prepare right off the bat, off of this one here that says contrast. This is the one that's my master at this point. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and open this guy up. It might take it a second because it is like probably a 1.2 gigabyte file. Because the 8 by 10, by the time I scan it at 2400 dpi, just the file coming out of the scanner is a gig. So and this laptop I believe is 4 years old. It is, back then it was the top of the line laptop. It is a MacBook 15-inch MacBook Pro. It does have the dedicated graphics card in it, which Photoshop and Lightroom can take advantage of the GPU inside of the computer, where Elements does not. So that's a little caveat. But anyway, it's been working quite nicely because I always like to overbuy when I buy my computers, and generally they last for about 10 years. Usually it's the software that gets so advanced that the hardware just can't keep up with the software. So that's why I buy the top of the line, whatever it is at the time, and then I know I'm going to get like 10 years out of it. So anyway, that's my deal on the computer. All right, so here you can see, here's our image, and it does have 2 layers. So here you can see it says, in this case I use Pro Contrast, and here's my background layer. And of course this file is right here. As you can see, it's like we'll call it 2.5 gigs, so that's good size. Now here's something else I want to show you. Now if you go under Image, resize image size. Now if you're in Photoshop, you go to image size. And if we go here, you will notice that right here's the width, and here's the height, and then here's the resolution. So how did I come up with this? When I scan my negatives, and they come into one of these programs, what I'll do is you will notice that these three are chained together. And down here I have resample image turned off. And this will generally come in here at 300 dpi. So just for fun, I'll go ahead and just change this for a second. And this is basically what I have to start with, is 61 by 77. I know my Epson scanner, its native resolution is 360 dpi. That's what it likes to print at for the best quality you can get out of it. Yeah, you can do 300, you can do other ones, but 360 is a magic number with Epson. Canon, I believe it's 300. So knowing that, I can just go in here and say, okay, let's get rid of 300 and let's make it 360. And because I have all three of these fields locked together, when I change the resolution, you'll notice I'm not adding or taking away any pixels, I'm just reshuffling them. So instead of it being, what was it, like 61 by 77, now it's 51 by 64. So it's come down a little bit. But if you think about this, 360 dpi at 51 by 64, try this with one of your raw files coming out of your camera. That's what led me to go down film, is because I looked at the Nikon D850 or the 810 and the 850. I looked at the Canon 5D SR, that's 50 megapixel camera. And I started playing with these raw files, and I didn't want to add any pixels to my images. I wanted to use the data that the camera could grab for me. And through some testing, I found out I just couldn't get to these super crazy sizes that I wanted to do with the detail at 360 dpi. That's what led me to go down the large format film path. And I'll tell you, I really love it. I really don't miss my I don't miss my film camera at all. In fact, it's probably got 4 inches of dust on it. It's been a while. So anyway, so as long as I crop and I do anything less than 51 by 64, in this case, we're golden. My biggest print that I have made thus far is 40 by 50. So, okay, so 40 is, you know, a little bit less than 51, and 50 is less than 64, so we're good. So today what we're going to work with is 8 by 10s. So I'm just going to cancel out of this. I just want to try and explain how I came up with those numbers. So now when you go to crop, so I'm just going to go ahead and pull this out a little bit. Now the other thing we do to speed things up is I'll go ahead and go over here to this little flyout menu, and this is the same thing in Photoshop. You can just go down here to do flatten image, and this kind of will make everything all one layer and speeds things up a little bit for us. All right, so then I'm going to come over here and grab my crop tool. And then down here, and now if you're using full-blown Photoshop CC, this option will be on the top. So I'm going to choose no restrictions. So down here, basically, it's going to ask me what size do I want to crop this to. So I'm going to put 8, and if you hit the tab key, it will automatically put the IN for inches. It does also know pixels, which will be PX. It also knows centimeters, which is CM. I think that's it. All right, so then we'll do 10, and then I'll hit tab, and you see it says IN, and of course that's also in the drop-down list, but you know, if I was going to do like a 16 by 20, that one's not in the list. And when I'm talking about the list, here's the list. So you can see it says, like here's a lot of the normal sizes, like 4 by 6, 5 by 7. A lot of people use 8 by 10, but if I was going to do like a 16 by 20, it's not in the list. So I'd have to put that in there. Then over here, it's going to ask me for resolution. Now again, we know in our case here for today that the Epson printer will print at 360 dpi. So I'm going to put in 360. So there we go. So there's our 360. Okay, so that's how I came up with that. Now, I use the whole piece of film. I don't, once in a blue moon, if I can't get close enough, because I've only got one lens, it's a prime lens, I have to physically get closer or further away to actually you know, get zoom in, zoom out, and there's once in a while I can't do that, and then I will crop the film. But most of the time I can generally get the composition on the large format camera the way I want it. So this way I can use 100% of the film. So I'm just going to basically take my crop tool here. I'm just going to come up here to the corner and bring this down And because I stick with the same aspect ratios of the 8x10 film, it fits. So if you've ever tried to take something out of your, like a digital DSLR camera, and you have that, and then you're like, oh, I want to make an 8x10, and you go to draw the box, and then you have like a strip on one side or the other, and it's like grayed out. It's trying to tell you that that part's going to be trimmed off. So I get phone calls from my students, and they say, well, why can't we, I want the whole thing, why can't I? And I'm like, well, you can, but it's going to be squished. And it comes down to aspect ratio, and that's a whole nother deal. Maybe we'll do a video on that sometime. But anyway, so this is, I'm sticking with the same aspect ratio of the film. That's why I can use the whole thing. Okay, so basically I'm just going to go ahead and click the check mark. It's going to take us from this ginormous, ridiculous 2 gig file. Now we're down to, now you see all that it shrunk, and you're like, wow, that's great, Spence. It's the size of a postage stamp. But as you can see, we're only at 4% viewing. So if I'm just going to zoom in here a little bit, and basically here is, and we're not even at 100%. By the way, the hand tool is always a good tool, no matter what program you're in, to click around, because you can't hurt nothing. So here's 50%. So, and by the way, you can check your rulers. Here's another tip. If you don't have your rulers showing, you can go over here to View, and then just click the check mark next to Rulers, and then you will have your rulers on the top and on the side, and then of course you can come down here and check to make sure it says whatever it is that you want it to be. All right, now this is sized. It's ready to go as far as sizing and resolution. However, we have not sharpened it yet. So I sharpen all my photos, and there's all kinds of ways to do this. Under the filter menu, you have a sharpen menu. It's been so long, to be honest with you, I haven't been in here. There's a sharpen menu here somewhere. Oh, I'm using elements, so it's under here. Here it is, unsharp mask. In Photoshop, you have a sharpen menu. But here's your unsharp mask and your adjust sharpness, which you can use. I personally don't use those. I'm a Nik person, and I'm so glad to hear that DxO bought Nik, so that'll be good. All right, so over here we have our different modules from Nik, and I'm just gonna click on Output Sharpener. By the way, I don't know of anybody that uses raw pre-sharpener, so most of the time we're gonna be using Output Sharpener. And it's gonna load our image for us. Now I know when I was photographing this and I was trying to get my focus, I'll just zoom into this section down here. You can see this little red box. This is kind of like your navigator showing you what's gonna show you on the screen. So I focused right in the center of this wheel. Now, over here, if you've never seen this before, it's pretty easy to use. You tell it what your output is going to be. In this case, you have a choice of display, which would be your online stuff like Facebook, email, websites, anything like that, TV, if you're going to do anything with videos. So today we're going to print. So I have an inkjet printer, that's what we're going to use. Or you have these other ones. This is for commercial printing. So if you're in that boat, then you might need continuous tone or halftone. When I was working in print shops, we had these 6-color presses with UV coaters and all kinds of fun stuff to play with, and that was all halftone, but that's a different story. For this, I'm going to use inkjet. All right, so now it's going to ask you what the viewing distance is. Now, there are some in here that you can pick from in feet. Everybody I've talked to, including Nik, they said leave it on auto. It works best on auto. Okay, fine. So if you want to test it for yourself, go for it. Now here's a paper type. Now you remember I mentioned about how the ink will spread on different papers. When I worked at the newspaper, we would always over sharpen our images to the point where it would look terrible. But when they come off the press, basically, because they were so over sharpening going in, that when the ink spread, it looked like it was supposed to. I know it sounds kind of counterintuitive. But then when I went to sheet printing, like when we did magazines and we worked on glossy stuff, we didn't have to sharpen as much because the ink was not spreading as much. And that is why we have these choices here. You can see textured and fine art paper. This might be even some of your Hammermühle products. You have your canvas. Plain paper is not coated, so it's going to definitely spread, so will matte. And we have luster and glossy. So I've played with all of these over the years, and the one that I personally like is luster. Luster gives me the pop of the gloss without the reflectance problem. So if you've ever taken a piece of gloss paper and gone outside and kind of went like this, or even under fluorescent lights, and you see that harsh glare on it, that's why I've kind of gone with luster. Works good for me, and I like it for all my prints. All right, for printer resolution, Then you get all these choices. So I know that mine is this 1440 by 720. How did I know this? I had to look it up. So I went back to Epson's website and I saw what the printing resolutions were for that particular printer, and I have a choice of 720 by 720, 1440 by 720, and then the other one's 2800 by 1440. So why don't I use this one? Isn't it supposed to be better? Well, I found that the 2880 basically takes a whole lot longer to print, and it does eat up some more ink. But when I put them side by side on a table and I ask people, I said, which one do you like better? And they go, we can't tell the difference. So for me, I've chose the 1440 by 720 mainly for speed. So that's what works. Okay, so we have all of our choices there. Now you will see, here's your preview window here. And you can see on the right side, like on this, the grease on this wheel and the light falling on this is a little bit more crispy than what's on the left side. So this is your preview. So over here it's been showing you what's been done or what will be done, and this is before. You can take this, your cursor, put it on the red line and move this back and forth, and you can see how that really tightens things up. Now if you think, well, that's great, but it's maybe a little bit too crispy, we can come over here to our output sharpening strength, and right now it's set to 100. And I will generally, depending on the size of the photo, what I'm working on, I'll bring this down to like 50 or 60 just to kind of get started. Because I want it to look sharp, but I don't want people to go, wow, boy, Spence, you really sharpened, this photo to death and it looks awful. So I want them to actually look at the photo, not at the sharpening, if that makes sense. So I'll just go ahead and you see I brought that down to about 60, and I can probably live with that, so that's not too bad. By the time it hits the paper, it's going to look really nice too. So go ahead and we'll just click OK. And it's going to create another layer. So there you go. So there's our sharpening that's been applied. Nick always works with layers. And I'll just go ahead and collapse this for right now because we're done with that. Okay, so it's the correct size, it's correct resolution, it's been sharpened. So now it's time to print this. Okay, and by the way, I always print in RGB. I found even though I scan in 16-bit grayscale, to keep the file size manageable, I choose the 16-bit grayscale because a 48-bit color, it would be out of sight. I don't know what would happen. I should try it sometime to see if the smoke starts rolling out of the back of the computer. That'd be kind of fun. That's how you get new stuff. You break the old stuff. But I have found through my testing that I can get richer blacks by using RGB instead of printing in grayscale. So you might want to do a test on your printer. Just print one. It is RGB, and then how you would change that is you can go up here to image mode grayscale. And when you click this, a little window will come up and say, do you really want to discard the color information? Just hit yes. And then it will actually make it, instead of red, green, blue, it makes it all shades of gray. So there you go. So you might want to try that. Again, I found that the RGB just gives me a little bit better pop, a little bit more black saturation for what I'm looking for. Okay, cool. So now we're going to actually print this. So I just do File, Print. And then when this loads, this is pretty simple. Photoshop is pretty similar. So right here, you're going to pick whatever printer you're going to print to, and then the paper size that you want to put it to. And then here you have the option elements. You can actually knock it down here to whatever. I have found that this will hurt the resolution or the look of your photo, the detail. So I always want to make sure it says actual size. So that's just something that you want to make sure before you hit print that this is set to actual size. That's an elements thing, not a Photoshop thing. All right, now the other thing I want to do is I want to come down here and click on page setup. And again, if you're using another program, it may look a little bit different, and I'm on a Mac. If you're on Windows, it's going to look a little bit different. Depending on the printer that you have, if you have a Canon instead of an Epson, it might look a little different. So, but it's generally pretty much the same. So you just kind of have to look around and you'll find what you're looking for. All right, so the first thing is it's going to ask me about paper size. So there we go. Now here, it's going to ask me a bunch of these different questions, these drop downs. I don't mess with the first part of this. I basically come down here where it says printer settings. This is what I want to see. It's going to ask me what paper type am I using. Do I have the color management turned on? This kind of stuff. So basically, page setup is set to roll paper. I do buy my paper does come either on a 24-inch or a 44-inch roll, and it's 100 feet long. So yeah, I got some, you get some paper to work with. Here is the type of paper that you're going to want to choose, whatever it is that you're working with. There's all kinds of stuff in here. Here's that fine art that we were looking at. So you might want to choose whatever it is. Now I know that mine is the Luster Paper 260. Print mode, AccuPhoto, fine. If you're on a Mac, you have the choice of 16-bit output. I haven't really noticed a big difference with that, but if you want to, try it. Now here's the big one, color mode, and this is Epson Standard sRGB. I don't want the printer doing any thinking when it comes to color management. I want the computer and the software driving. So I'm going to go in and I'm going to turn off the color management for the printer. So this is not the software turning off, we're turning it off on the printer. So we don't have the printer trying to color manage and have the software color manage, and then we got two things trying to manage, and it could be a mess. So we're going to turn off the color management, having the printer trying to figure it out. We're going to tell it what to do. Here's your choices of those options that you have. There's the fine, the super photo, which is 1440, and then the 2880 again. I found the 1440 is just fine. I've done exhibitions and galleries. Nobody can tell the difference. You have high speed. What basically this means, if you're offered this, is that as the print is going back and forth, it will print in both directions. So that speeds things up. Some people say that it's better quality if it only prints in one direction. Again, I have not been able to tell. If I can speed things up and it still looks to my satisfaction, why not? The other thing is, I don't understand why this isn't on by default, but it says finest detail. So yes, let's turn that on. And then basically I'm just going to come down here. By the way, where it says advanced color settings, you'll see now it says Epson driver is off. So that's good. We want that off. So I'm just going to come down here to advanced media control. And now this is if you have a bigger printer. You may not have this on your printer if you have a desktop printer. As I always check to make sure the platen gap is set to auto. That has to do with, you can change the print head, how far it is to the paper. So most people may not need to worry about this. That's fine. And here's the roll paper settings. So again, this is kind of on a bigger printer. This is an option where as the sheet comes out, it can be difficult to take a pair of scissors and try to cut it. So luckily there's a knife built into some of these, and mine just happens to have one. So when the print comes out, knife comes across and just cuts the paper. So I just gotta wait for it. It's all done. So that's kind of nice. And then one other thing, we'll check to see if this will update. I'm not connected to my printer right now, and it's not going to show me right now. However, the supply levels, so to show me which ink might need to be replaced, like a magenta or a cyan or something like that. All right, so once we have all that done, I'm just going to go ahead and click Save. Now, you think, oh good, now we hit print. We got one more little thing we got to check. Okay, so down here, now this is a little secret button in Elements, and in Photoshop, I'm going to flip over there and I'll show you kind of what this looks like over there in a minute. It says More Options. So if I click on this, this comes up, and you have where you can do these certain things, like if you want to put the date on there, which I can't imagine why, unless you're doing research of something. If any of you are going to be working with iron-on transfers, that can be kind of fun. We can print something out and then flip it over and take an iron and put it on a t-shirt. So that's where you definitely would want something like that, but I'm assuming nobody would want to mess with this. Custom print size, we won't even cover that because that's pretty there's not going to be enough people that are going to want to deal with that. All right, so this is the one that you really need to know about. The color management. Now this is Photoshop driving, not the printer. And we want Elements or Photoshop or Lightroom to drive. And this is how we're going to tell it where to go. So color handling, right here, we're going to tell it not printer manages color, but Photoshop manages color. And you can see I've got software is already set for Adobe RGB, which is good. And then printer profile. So these are the files that we downloaded from the manufacturer, in this case Epson. And here you can see, here's a whole list full of stuff that is in here that I downloaded, and this is what came in here. So I know that this is their weird code for the Luster 260 that I'm using. So I'm going to leave it on that. Then you have the choice of these four. However, people that I know only use really two. is perceptual and relative colorimetric. When I got started, I tried relative colorimetric and it did okay. And then I decided, well, let me do a color comparison between two. So I did one of perceptual and one of relative colorimetric, and I found that the perceptual was a little bit better. So I generally stick with perceptual, and that's, now that I'm doing black and white, basically I'm just dealing with tones of gray, even though I am printing in RGB, if that makes sense. So the gradations of what it's going to lay down to give me those tones of gray, a little bit smoother for me. Okay, so you just click OK. Now here's the only little gotcha with this, is you'll notice over here in elements, for whatever reason, it has gone to custom. We don't want that, we want actual size. We need this to say actual size. Now at this point, we could click print, and the printer will start up and it's going to crank out a sheet for us. It may allow you to go in and check those settings one more time just to make sure that you get what you want to get. If you print anything less in elements than 220 DPI, you're going to get this little warning. It's going to say this image is less than 220 DPI. Do you want to continue? And you can hit yes. There's just trying to help you and warn you that it may not be as quality that you're expecting. So again, that's if you've tested your stuff and you can get away with it. Like I know with this printer that I have, there's certain things I can do with it that's less than 360 DPI, and it looks really good. So, all right, so while we're doing that, well, that's going to be printing. Let's head over here to Photoshop for a minute. And I've got that all ready to go. So let's go ahead. No, we thought we had it all ready to go. I guess not. Then no worries. So what we'll do is we're going to head and open up that image. Then we'll open up the 8x10 here. And I save everything again as TIFFs just because I find it's non-destructive. I'm just going to hide the elements for a minute just so that's not in our way. And I'll go ahead and hide the nick here for a minute, kind of clean everything up here on the screen. Okay, so basically this has already been, well, let's just check. So if I go to image size, and as you can see it says 8x10 at 360 DPI, so I know we're good to go. Okay, so if I wanted to print this, I would go ahead and sharpen it, but you guys just saw with that, so I won't waste your time with that again. So I do File, Print. All right, now here we go. So again, now this is CS5. If you're using CC, it probably looks a little bit different. I'm sure they've updated it, but it shouldn't be so strange that you can't figure it out. All right, so here we've got printer. You can pick the printer that you want, and then down here you got your print settings. So if I go ahead and click on this, this should bring up, yeah, so here we go. So here you can see here's my different sizes. We'll talk about these here in a minute. So you pick whatever you want, and then here, this looks exactly the same. So I just go in here, choose all my different options again, and hit save. Now, instead of hitting more options like we did in Elements, because we don't have that, you can go over here to Photoshop Manages Color. This is where we can change it. So we want Photoshop to manage color, and there's a little warning comes up, says, did you remember to disable the print management in the driver? So that's where we went in and turned off the Epson RGB, if you remember that a little bit ago. And here it's asking for a printer profile. So here's that same printer profile. And then here's perceptual, or here's these ones here. So you can pick whichever one it is you like. Black point compensation, I usually leave this on. I used to know what this means, but to be totally honest with you, I forgot. I have to look it up again, but it's working. So, and basically I'll even tell you down here, as you can see, as I hover over this, down in the lower right, it gives you an explanation of what it's going to do. All right, so at this point, I would just click print, and then that's it. We go off to the races. All right, so one other thing I'm going to, while we're in Photoshop, let's go over this, because I wanted to show you this. If you have Photoshop, or if you have Lightroom, or if you have Affinity Photo, you can soft proof. And if this is a new term for you, this could be huge for you. So as you're working, wouldn't it nice to see what it's going to look like when it comes out on a piece of paper? I mean, it's kind of like the whole point, right? Okay, so if you go up here to View, I have this proof set up, and then I can go over here to, and there's a bunch already in here, but I'm just going to choose Custom. And here it's going to say Device to Simulate. So these are actually the ICC profiles that we've downloaded from your camera manufacturer to begin with, or your printer's manufacturer. So here's that same PLPP260, which is, I guess, their way of saying luster, and perceptual. And the black point compensation is turned on. I was told by Epson and some of the printing companies, do not turn these two on, simulate paper color and simulate black ink. You would think that's a good thing, but I guess it's not. So you don't turn these on. As long as you have the ICC profile checked, and then you have perceptual or relative colorimetric, whichever one you decide to use, and this here, you're good to go. So you just click OK. And now what you'll notice, if I spread this out a little bit, now it doesn't just say RGB, it says RGB, which is red, green, blue. We're an 8-bit, and then here is the profile that we're using. So now when we work on this, whether it's to lighten it, to darken it, to make any kind of changes, we know that we're using the printer profile that we're going to be printing with. So it's going to give us our best representation on the screen of what's going to come out on the piece of paper. So anyway, that's really good. All right. So I'm going to show you guys one other little tip for any of you that might have, if you're in the market for a new printer, something that you might want to consider is, because I always get people to call me up and they say, for whatever reason their printer is not working, they're due for another one. Okay, so let me just open up another image here, and there's a method to my madness here. Just put up with me for 1 second. Let's go into. See, do I have I think I have the generator open. Yep, okay, so let's go ahead and open up the abandoned gas station. And there we go, okay. What's nice about having a roll printer or a roll option, if you have even a 17-inch printer, some of them will allow you to put a roll in the back, and then you can get up to 100 feet on the roll, is your price per square foot goes down. Same thing with the ink. So that's kind of nice if you have that option. So this is what I will generally do, is I will have multiple images ready to go to be printed, and then I'll print them all at once on one big sheet of paper. So just to quickly kind of go over how I imposition my photos, goes back to my days of printing, is I just want to make sure that they're both, in this case, the same resolution. So if I do image size 360, perfect. And if I click on this document here to activate it, and I do image, resize, image size 360, perfect. So now I know these are both the same resolution. They have to be the same resolution if you're going to put them on the same sheet. All right, so now to get them on the same sheet of paper, I'm just going to do new blank file. Now I mentioned that my rolls come in either 24 or 44. So I'm thinking if these are 8 by 10, and if I take and I turn them this way, then they'll be 10 and 10. So that's 20, and I got a 24-inch sheet of paper. So I still got plenty of room. So I'm going to go ahead and do 24, and they're going to be 8 tall. So I'll do 9. That'll give me a little extra left over to play with. And then here is 360s. That is the resolution we're working with, RGB. That's great. Click OK. So then again, I got the hand tool. It's always safe. I've got my ruler set up here, so I can kind of keep an eye on things, and I can do a little bit of measuring. This is really super simple. So basically, if I know that I'm going to put 10 and 10, that's going to give me 20, and then I'm going to have 4 left over. So if I do an inch here, an inch on the other end, and then 2 inches in the middle, that's going to make up the other 4 inches. So basically, I'm just going to come over here, and if you didn't know this, you can actually, let me get up here so you can see the other guide here, or the other ruler. So if you put your cursor inside the ruler, I can click and drag over, and I can actually put that on about the one inch mark and let go. Now I made the document 9 inches, and our photos are 8 inches. So that's going to say 1/2 inch, right? So if I just bring this down, so there we go. So now I kind of know where to start there. And then what I'll do is I'll just bring another guide over to the 23-inch mark, and that'll give us an inch on the other end. So now if I take this photo here to start with, and I want to rotate it, so I'm just going to come down here to where this rotate button is and click, and now it's going to turn it for me. I've only got 1 layer, so that's good. I'm just going to grab the move tool. I'm just going to grab this and dump it on top of this document. It automatically copies it and puts it on there as a new layer. So basically we will close out of this. We're done. Won't bother saving that. And then we've got this other guy here. He's hiding back there in the background. So I'm going to do the same thing with him. I'm just going to rotate him around. And then I'm going to just put my cursor inside this document window and click and drag and put it into the white one. And it's automatically going to copy it, and I'm just going to make a new layer for it, and we're done with this. And we're not going to save that. We're done with that. Okay. So now here's my sheet of paper. It's got 2 8 by 10s on it. and I've got some white space left over. So how in the world do you get something that's 24 by 9? That's a very strange size. Well, on a roll, paper can be virtually any size, which is nice. So what I can do is I can go up here to File, Print, and again, I can choose my big printer. Now select paper size. Instead of doing it here, what I will do is I'm going to come down here to Page Setup. And that is where we click here. That's where you get all these strange sizes. You'll notice I've got one in here already set up that says 24 by 9. And they're all different sizes. I mean, 24 by 28. And they're not going to say that kind of sheet of paper. That's something that comes off the roll. So what's nice is I can come down here and where it says Manage Custom Sizes, I can actually make a custom size sheet of paper. I know a lot of people are not going to need this, but for some of you that hopefully this will help for those of you that might be interested in getting into this. So I'm just going to choose 24 by 9. Again, I'm not going to spend all day going all over this again. You guys, we just did this. So roll paper, I would turn off the color management. That looks good. And then I would just come down here to make sure that the platen gap is set and my roll paper is going to be normal cut. Okay, fine. There we go. Now you say that's perfect, except the paper's going the wrong way. It's kind of tall. Well, we need to turn the guy right side up. So over here, if you'll see orientation, I just click on this button and it magically spins it around and now it fits. And here you can see actual size. I would go down here, check my ICC profile and make sure that that is set to perceptual. And then let it rip. So let's do this. Let's, what I'll do is we'll print this out and we'll see how it comes out. Okay, so the printer's done. We've got our prints made. They look pretty good. You can see here, here's what we just set up. So this is our sheet that's 24 by 9. So what I'll do is I'm going to trim these down and I'm going to prepare them for this. Now, I watched some other YouTube channels. One that you might want to check out, his name is Nick Mayo. If you haven't checked out his channel, I'll put a link down below. Him and I are on the same page when it comes to get your work out of the computer and get it into print format. So to me, this is now finished. I can look at it, I can feel it, I can touch it. Can you smell it? Oh, by the way, another thing about, I'm strange, I know, but another thing about when you go to make your prints, I did read, I took a minute just to verify the information was correct. Epson says on their substrates that the ink is not set, fully set for 24 hours. So what I do is I leave these flat, just laying around the house like this, and before I start to mess with them. If you're in a hurry, it's probably okay. I've pushed it before, should be okay. But if you're not in a hurry or you can plan ahead, just try to leave these out if you can and just let them fully set. Sometimes when I do like a lot of these prints that are 36 and 50 inch, they can, I don't know where to put them. I'm going to start hanging them from the ceiling, I guess. I don't know. But all right, back to my discussion of why I make prints. Now, every film photo that I take with the 8x10, I print every single one. And I realize this is not practical if you're shooting all the time, if you're shooting digital, if you're shooting 35 millimeter, if you're shooting 120. Because, for example, 35 millimeter, you might have 12, 24, 36 exposures on a roll. 120, depending upon what you're shooting, could be 10 or 12 exposures. Of course, digital, you can sit there and you can motor 15 frames a second all day long. But with 8x10, it's like the equivalent. I try to think about this, is the equivalent of shooting like a Abrams tank. You got to open up the chamber, you got to load the shell into the tank, you got to close the chamber, you got to aim the barrel, you got all this stuff you got to do before you can make a really big bang. And so I'm not printing, or I'm not shooting a lot of scenes. You know, I try to do a couple a week. So this is what I've done. So I went out and I bought one of these little 8x10 portfolio things, and now every picture that I've taken is in here, and this is in chronological order. So some of these are not going to be prize winners by any means. Having said that, for example, I don't know if you'll see this, but this is my very first image I ever took with my 8x10. I always cherish it. Is it going to win an award? Probably not. This was Delta 100, and you can see I really blew out the sky, and I had some issues, but I'm proud of this because it was my first. I actually got silver to stick on film. I was happy. So then as I go through here, you can see is how I've progressed in different places I've gone to and different subject matters, and where I started to change. Now this is where I started going into FP4 Plus, which really helped me trying to keep the highlights and the shadows where I wanted them. But anyway, I can go through this at any time. It's not going to crash. The software is not going to go out of date. This is paper. It's something that I can actually look at and see, oh gee, yeah, Spencer, you're coming along. Or I can go, boy, that didn't work. Maybe we need to go back to this place and try again, whatever it is. So what I'm getting at is, whether you shoot 35mm, 120 digital, 8x10, 4x5, whatever it is you want to shoot, you should take a collection of them and put them in something like this. And have this for yourself. And you can take these spines out and you can design yourself a nice little spine if you wish. And that's what I'm going to do with these. So in chronological order, I will trim these down, and I will take the gas station that we worked on. That will go in next, and then I'll do the generator. This is actually from a trip that I snuck down to Corshon Historical Site in Estero, Florida, and got this. So it was a great 20-minute exposure, but it was still great to get. All right, so I hope that helps. I know we covered a lot of stuff. I appreciate you guys watching. I know these videos are kind of long, but hopefully it helps you with any of your part of your process, your workflow. If you have any questions, please comment down below. I read and will respond to every comment. I appreciate you taking the time to watch. I know everybody's busy and they've got all kinds of things that they could be doing, so I appreciate you taking time to watch this video. If you feel like it and you like the content, you might want to like and subscribe. But yeah, so we'll see you on the next one, and thanks again for watching. Wait, I forgot something. I knew I was forgetting something. So I showed you the 8x10 prints that we just did. What if you want to make a real print? So I mentioned this printer does have 44-inch wide paper. So that'd only be share if I shared you one of the prints. So this is what I like to print. And this is from a lily that I did a while ago. This is my first flash photo. It took 32 pops from a flash. I'm gonna have to hold it up so it gets in the camera view. Hopefully you guys can see this. So this picture is 40 by 50. So kind of keep that in mind. I'm 6'4", so even if I hold it this way, it's still, it's pretty long. So anyway, this is why I shoot large format. I'll just throw it down there. We can always print another one. This is why I shoot large format, is because this is the kind of size that I want people to walk up to my photos and go like this with them. Everybody says, oh, you should enjoy a piece of artwork or something so many feet back, and that's great. But for my stuff, all the work I put into this, I want people to walk up and go, wow, look at the ripples and the detail that's in the leaves of that lily. It's just amazing. I know it's hard to tell on video, but it's just amazing. Even when I shoot a forest scene and you can see lichen or tree bark that is the 5th or 7th tree back into the forest. It's just totally amazing. So again, I hope you like this. Print your photos, do a photo book. I know zines are kind of the big thing now too, so do a zine, do something, do something on paper. It's not just all about Facebook, Instagram, the website. Get something tangible that you can see and feel and share with people and give them out as gifts. Other photographers, they love that. I'd love getting prints from other people so I can enjoy them myself. So, and I like to share my prints with other people as well. So don't be afraid, make a print. Thanks for watching.